Eric Ward finished his cup of coffee in the police canteen and made his way down to the cells. A constable accompanied him to unlock the first cell door. Eric's client sat huddled in a corner, elbows on his knees, a sullen look on his face. Eric observed him silently for a few moments. The man was in his 40s now, and the lean muscle he had used to explode through defences 20 years ago had gone. He was heavy-bodied, still light on his feet, but sagging around the waist. His features were mottled and his attitude sullen. Discontent had etched lines around his mouth and his pouched eyes. Out of curiosity, Eric had obtained from the Newcastle Library archives some old film of matches played by Newcastle United, in which Dieter Barschell had played a part. There had been a few shots of the younger man, now almost unrecognisable in build. The man himself had had little to say about the old days when, trying to put him at ease, Eric had asked about his past life. He had been somewhat dismissive of those days, when success had come quickly to him. Perhaps it was the realization that years of easy money had been negated by foolish frittering away of earnings at the racetrack, on women, and failed business ventures. "There are always vultures," he had muttered to Eric in reluctant explanation. "They hover around with their greedy beaks open, waiting to tear at the flesh of your earnings." He had been similarly reluctant to talk about his earlier days, in Germany, Italy, and Spain, and on his childhood he would not be drawn, beyond saying that he had come from a poor family, and that it had not been easy to get out of Romania in the days of communism and dictatorship. "It was football that got me out," he admitted. "I was signed to play for the junior team at Dynamo Berlin." Now, as Eric stood over him, he remained hunched in silent anger. It was an attitude he had retained ever since he had agreed that Eric should represent him. Guilty or not, he was consumed with a bitterness that seemed to tear at his vitals. And at first he had given Eric very little to work with. He had seemed to regard his confinement, and the charges against him, as an irrelevance. Rather, he gave the appearance of concentrating upon other matters, frowning as he went over things inside his own head. He demonstrated a certain indifference to his incarceration, simply shook his head, denying the offence with which he was charged. It was only after Jackie Parton had arrived at Eric's office on the quayside that things had begun to change. Eric's secretary, Susie Cartwright, had been smiling when she announced the ex-jockey's arrival. Jackie Parton always had that effect upon her. Somehow or other the wiry, wizened little man with the bowed legs always managed to bring a smile to her face, even when she was at her most disapproving of Eric's client list and failure to deal sufficiently quickly with the files she regularly deposited on his desk.